What is good, y'all? It's your boy Kia Orion, the man who is obsessed with making dope music and teaching you how to make your own. And in today's video, I'm going to teach you how to make vocals like this.
I won't answer, you keep calling. I took chances, I went all in. Where were you when I need the most? Put my back on the wall, hit you a ghost.
If that sounds dope to you, stick around and we're going to show you exactly how to do it, all the knobs and switches that you have to tweak in order to make it happen. But if you want to get the template, you can check it out in the description below. I'll have that posted up so that way you can just buy it if you don't want to worry about it and just throw it on, make your vocals sound dope. Without further ado, let's jump into the computer and I'll show you exactly what it takes to make this sound. See you there. Hey, 1 2 1 2, yo, what's good? It's your boy. You already know what it is. So we're back in action, and today I'm going to show you how I made this kind of Lil Tjay vocal template. This is modeled after his song "Calling My Phone," and so first I kind of remade the beat, kind of in that similar vibe with this kind of low. It's like a pitched up sample. And then, so something like that. And then this is kind of what the vocal sounds like. So I'd love to play the Lil Tjay joint, but because of copyright, I can't. So this is kind of what the overall vocal, the overall vibe that we're shooting for.
I won't answer, you keep calling. I took chances, I went all in. Where were you when I need the most? Put my back on the wall, hit you a ghost. Mystery solved, I'm seeing it, how you done it. Blaming me now, who, that's good, ain't you funny? Olive branch, I gave you hung my noose from it. Keep it 200, your true colors, I see them now.
So pretty much, there are a few pieces about this vocal that I noticed right off the bat that I created for you guys in this kind of overall Lil Tjay template. So again, you'll be able to find this in the description below if you want it. If you don't have to worry about it, you just want to plug and play, you'll be able to do that. But if you want to follow along, I'll talk to you about exactly how I built out this vocal, the decisions I made, and these kind of macros that I mapped for you. So you can kind of see the way that I approached mixing this vocal to get it sound the way that he did in his song "Calling My Phone." So if that sounds cool, buckle in and let's do it. It's a bummer because I can't play his vocal here because of copyright, but you just gotta take my word for it. So this is kind of what I approached the vocal with. If you listen to the track, just pause this video, whatever you're doing, or if you know the track, his vocals are very present. So they're very kind of up in your face. And they're pretty wet too. So they have a lot of delay. They aren't like way back in the mix with the reverb like a Party Next Door or Tory Lanez. They're a little bit more upfront, but they have a lot of like delays going on if you listen to them. And what's nice about the song "Calling My Phone" is he has them kind of isolated in different points. And I heard a little bit of kind of like a little bit of analog, not distortion, but a little bit of analog saturation. Oh, quite a bit of delays. They're spacey. There's some reverb going on, but they're very much like present up in your face and very compressed. And so those were kind of the ideas that I went into. Those are the ideas that I took going into this and crafting this beat as well. Kind of all the different pieces and where his vocal kind of sat in the mix against the piano. The beat's actually pretty simple. It's just kind of, he had these vocal chops and then he has the piano and the keys, and then his vocals. And so, in that bass too, that really kind of intense heavy bass. So first things first, obviously, your boy got to have that auto-tune on. It's not going to be a modern rap trap track without some auto-tune. Auto-tune settings, I'm using auto-tune EFX. Retune speed at 4, which is pretty fast. Low male setting, and then I use soft effects, but I think he uses hard because you can tell he has a lot of auto-tune on his voice. So that's one part. I have a little bit of gain staging done on this utility. You don't have to worry about this. However you record your vocals in, just make sure they're loud enough. If they aren't, this is what I've done here. And then let's jump into the meat and potatoes of this. So this is how the vocal sounds as it is.
I won't answer, you keep calling. I took chances, I went all in. Where were you when I need the most? With my back on the wall, hit you a ghost.
So that's what the vocal sounds like by itself. This is the vocal with the doubles.
I won't answer, you keep calling. I took chances, I went all in. Where were you when I need the most?
So you kind of see what I'm saying, but we'll take the vocals, the doubles off for now just to keep it pretty straightforward. Also, I'll have a template as well for the doubles because I notice his doubles are pretty present in the mix, which is why they're loud here. So if you end up buying the template, you also get the doubles template as well. But let's jump into this. So taking all these off, this is what it sounds like with nothing on it. This is just the regular vocal.
I won't answer, you keep calling. I took chances, I went all in.
Lot of room noise. They sound really boxy. They're loud enough, which is nice, but they need a lot of work. So the first thing that I did here, and if you look at any of my other tutorials, this is a pretty common this is a common Kia move, and just kind of mixing in general, is you want to start by controlling the vocal. You want to take out the stuff that's crappy first, and then you want to start boosting it. So even if you look at this channel here, it's EQ, it's more EQ, it's de-essing, it's compressing, and then even more control before we look at how many steps we're in before we even start adding effects, because you want to make sure that things are controlled. You've taken out the crappy parts. As you can tell, these are EQ frequencies I've gone through and scanned. And so if you buy this template, make sure that you go through and scan these yourself, because these will be different than for my voice than for your voice. So make sure you don't want to cut out frequencies that you don't need to. But what I have done here to make it easy is this low cut knob, just so that you can see kind of what this is because I have a pretty high voice, and Lil Tjay did too. He didn't have a ton of like he doesn't have a ton of like super lows in his voice. It was pretty high, so you can cut out depending on where you want. I normally rest around probably maybe like 120 to 150, somewhere in there. So that's what this first knob is this EQ. This first EQ, this is just scanning for problem frequencies. So I'll just go through, I'll scan pretty much, but this Q10, you can use any EQ though, as I always say, and I'll go in, I'll boost it up like this, and then I'll take my frequency and just scan it through here.
I won't answer, you keep calling. I
Like
took
those,
chances.
like those are no bueno. That's why I have so many in here, right? That's why I'm cutting those out through here. So that's what you want to do. EQ first and foremost. That's kind of what I was doing. Boom, boom, boom. Let's not leave number 10 engaged. That would not be cool. So that's the first EQ. And then the second EQ, I use this SSL channel. So if you have the Waves Gold bundle, you'll have all of these plugins except for this one. But this looks complicated and fancy. It's really not. Any EQ can do this job. I'm using this for two functions, as an EQ and as a compressor. But I want to talk to you about the EQ first, and then we'll talk compression. But again, I'm just loading up another EQ just to kind of control stuff even more. Here I'm just kind of doing, I'm really targeting specific frequencies. And this one, I'm really kind of shaping the vocal more with this one. So I have about 6 dB cut out around in here. And this is pretty much I don't want to keep you forever. So in rapid fire mode, this is kind of the low, I'm taking out stuff around like the 200 frequencies. I have a pretty tight band, taking out something around like the -7, in the like the 7 hertz range, and about a -5, and then in here about 1.38, taking that about -5, just a little bit of boosting, not much. This is kind of irrelevant. I have these filters on, but this is pretty much doing the same. This is a low pass filter. It's pretty much doing the same thing here, but I'm just throwing that on there because I like to just take out my vocals with here are super boxy. So listen to this.
I won't answer, you keep calling. I won't answer, you keep calling.
So you can tell it gets way more. It thins it out a ton, which is not a great thing, but I know I'll add the body back in later. So that's kind of what I'm doing here is with this EQ.
I won't answer, you keep calling. I took chances, I went all in.
You can also hear that now the S's are starting to jump out, and the high frequencies, because we ended up boosting in here a little bit. So that's the next part, is the de-essing. Okay, so jumping into the compression piece. So this is where okay, so for the SSL channel, what we want to do is with the compression, if you look at it,
I won't answer, you keep calling. I won't answer, you keep calling. I won't answer, you keep calling.
What this is doing is, what I've mapped here is the compression through comp through this threshold knob on your SSL. So pretty much what this will be able to do is, hey, come down here, let me show you what I'm doing. So you'll be able to control that compression from just this knob without having to go in here. And what I'm shooting for in this one is just to kind of tame the peaks a little bit, bring the vocal a little bit more kind of up front in your face. And I think that this compressor is really good for this. If you don't have the SSL compressor, don't worry about it. You could use H comp. You could use another R compressor. You could use anything just to start to tame the peaks a little bit. What you're looking for, the key is on this compressor is around like -3, for at least in the way that I like to mix, around like -3, -6. No hard and fast rules, but somewhere in there. You aren't doing a ton of compression, is what I'm saying. You just want to catch the peaks with this first one. So I have a fast attack, pretty about a medium release. Ratio is about 4-to-1, and then you dial this into taste.
I won't answer, you keep calling. I won't answer, I won't answer you. I won't answer, you keep calling. I won't answer, you keep calling.
And you can tell this is when you start to get that kind of analog saturation feel. So I'll bring this in maybe around like here.
I won't answer, you keep calling.
Not a ton of compression going on in there. And then you can decide if you want the compressor to trigger before your vocals come in or after vocals come in. Again, if you don't know what this means, don't worry about it. Trust your ear. Just turn this off and on and choose what works best for you. Now that we've got that going on, I can tell the S's are starting to affect me, things are jumping out a little bit. So now I have this de-esser knob over here.
I won't answer, you keep calling. I won't answer.
Helps if you turn it on.
I won't answer, you keep calling. I took chances, I went all in. I won't answer, you keep calling. I took chances, I went all in.
When I was listening to Lil Tjay vocals, he has a pretty compressed vocal, so I wasn't too worried about taking out these S's, especially because I knew later on if I wanted to bring this vocal forward like his is and really put it in your face, I'd need to do that. Okay, just wanted to check, make sure we're recording. So this I've mapped to this de-esser knob over here, so you can choose how much you want this de-essed or not. What you're going to want to do too is adjust this frequency between like 4,000, like 4K to like 55. So somewhere in there, you'll want to like dial it in. That's, at least for me, that's where I find a lot of S's and T's kind of lie. But you don't want to go so ham that you sound like you have a lisp.
I won't answer, you keep calling.
But
I took chances, I went all. I won't answer, you keep calling. I won't answer, you keep calling.
That feels about right to me. And then this is just the first one to catch kind of initial peaks. That's kind of a trick that I've picked up along the way is you want to de-ess. I de-ess at least now often, not a hard and fast rule, but twice. I know I have kind of initial one, and then a later one down the line as well, which we'll get to. So, but de-ess and compress is what I'm talking about. So this next part is then the compressor. So when it comes to this compressor, if you can tell, it's a 1.6, which isn't a huge ratio. And so what I have over here on this compressor that I've macro mapped for you is rather than the glue being the amount of compression, this is actually going to be the attack on the compressor. So this is kind of the glue, and this is when you're going to want to play it back in with the beat. And this is when we're going to start using compression to control the vocal and also bring some of the body back, and bring some of the presence of the vocal, like start to really kind of put it forward in the mix with these compressors. So if we look at this glue, let's play it with the beat.
I won't answer, you keep calling. I took chances, I went all in. Where were you when I need the most? With my back on the wall, hit you a ghost. Mystery solved, I'm saying.
So what you want to do with this one is when you're adjusting the attack, or the glue, that's what I call it, the glue, it's kind of how it fits in with the beat. And again, this threshold, you're going to want to adjust depending on how loud your vocal is. And this gain knob is really important. So if you don't know much about compressors, pretty much you want it to be around the same when you have the compressor on and off, normally, just so you can get the feel first.
I won't answer, you keep calling. I won't answer, you keep calling.
Because obviously you're going to say, oh yeah, turned on, that sounds a lot better. But it's only because I've boosted the gain a little bit. So the first thing you want to do is gain match it. So let's say like,
I won't answer, you keep calling. I took chances, I went all in. Where were you when I need the most? With my back on the wall, hit you a ghost. Mystery solved. I won't answer, you keep calling. I won't answer, you keep calling.
So that sounds about right. So this one, again, there's not a ton of compression happening on this one, but because I wanted to kind of bring some of that body back, I boosted up the gain a little bit. I think it was 4.1, somewhere in there. But this is normally not where you want to get your volume a lot of the time is from your compressor. You want to make sure your levels are right beforehand, which is why I have the gain staging, et cetera, before you start adding volume through your compressor. The point with the compressor is to add compression, not to necessarily always add volume. So keep that in mind. Threshold, you'll adjust this on your vocal depending on. how much compression you want.
I won't answer, you keep calling, I took.
Right? So
I won't answer, you keep calling, I took chances, I went all in. Where were you when I need the most? With my back on the wall, hit you, you a ghost. Mystery solved, I'm seeing it, how you done it.
that feels about right to me. And then the attack, you'll want to dial this in to taste for you. I tend to like a faster attack, especially on rap vocals, but depending on your vibe, you'll figure out what works for you. So that's kind of this initial compressor. And then this compressor is really where we're starting to get some serious control happening. So I don't have this mapped to a macro because this is one that you're going to have to dial in depending on your voice. So what I've done here is, if you don't know how this works, this is pretty much 4 different mini compressors. These are 4, think of this as a powerful tool as 4 different R compressors. What this means is each one of these is its own little R compressor with its own little threshold, gain, range, attack, and release. What range does, and that's not on the R compressor here, but what range does is pretty much it's telling the waveform how far down or up you want it to compress. So as you can see right in here in this part of the vocal, it's really boxy. And that's why I have a lot. I'm still kind of really using this to control the vocal. I'm still in that kind of control phase. And so here, if we just listen to this,
I won't answer, you keep calling.
helps you turn it on.
I won't answer, you keep calling.
And this,
I won't answer, you keep calling.
that's where a lot of my problem with my vocals is in this place, in this kind of boxy spot, because I don't record in a studio, just record in my bedroom, and that's where like you get a lot of those boxy room sounds. And so what you'll want to do when you come in here is you want to adjust this to taste. So this range you can pull down or up depending on how much you want or don't want. But this is there's definitely some compression going on here, but it's not like super crazy. So in that regards of like, if you want to come in here and kind of like fiddle around with it, it's a great idea to kind of adjust it for your voice. Also, you can mess with these bands, like see where things work out for you. But for me, I found like this would kind of work for me. Listen to this difference.
I won't answer, you keep calling.
Let's listen with the beat. That's another trick. So you want to listen with the beat as much as possible because you aren't listening to your vocal soloed, and neither is your audience. So listen with the beat, and then kind of you can start to make some. I mean, if you're like EQ, like this part, like if you're soloing this part of the vocal, you want to come in and really like test it.
I won't answer, you keep.
And like figure out.
I won't answer, you keep.
Like that's fine, but if you're like doing like a bigger kind of broader ideas, like turning this on and off and doing some tweaks, you'll want to do it with the beat.
I won't answer, you keep calling. I took chances, I went all in. Where were you when I need the most? With my back on the wall, hit you, you a ghost. Mystery solved, I'm seeing it, how you done it.
Listen, if you can't notice, listen to those boxy frequencies.
I won't answer, you keep calling. I won't answer, you keep calling.
You can tell there's a lot. That's what this is doing here. Is don't worry about these too much. Even if you bypass these, this is still important. I'm just taking out those boxy frequencies at the bottom. You could even bump that range down a bunch. Like this stuff is no bueno, at least for me, because this is room tones. So that's this C4, which is doing quite a bit of heavy lifting for me in terms of control.
I won't answer, you keep calling. I took chances, I went all in. Where were you when I need the most? With my back on the wall, hit you, you a ghost.
So now we've got kind of the vocal is it's still sounding pretty thin, but I'm not worried about that too much because I know we're going to get that back. But it's more in your face. It's sounding a little bit more clean, a little bit more controlled. And now we're going to jump into, when I heard Lil Tjay, all the effects that he had going on his voice, which I'll show you how to make right now. So now we get to have some fun with it. So let's jump into our parallel split. So if you don't know, I talk about this, and every time I do these walkthroughs too, if you don't know why it's a parallel split, it's pretty much because rather than having these things directly applied onto the vocal, you're pretty much having it, this is another sound that you're going to have affected, that you're going to blend into the main vocal. So keep that in mind. That's what these knobs are doing here, these little levels. It's how much you want to blend this wet signal into your dry signal. And that's what I've mapped out here for your macros to make this easy. Excuse me. So when I was listening to Tjay vocal, yes, it's in your face, but there are a lot of effects on here. He had a lot of delay and quite a bit of reverb. So that's what I'm doing is first with this H delay. It's at 1/8. It's all the way, because again, we're blending in this wet signal. We want this to be all the way wet. Because we aren't adding this directly to your vocal. It's pretty much a return track. If you don't have Waves plugins, by the way, you'd want to do this by just coming over here, and if you don't have the studio rack, you just come over here and say insert return track, and then you'd blend it in through return tracks. That's what we're doing. So let's do it. So this first delay is, I'm gonna solo these so you can kind of hear what this sounds like.
I won't answer, you keep calling. I took chances, I went all in.
So you can hear that, right? It's almost like a slapback delay. It's like, you'll see it. So if let's move this all the way up. You'll hear what I'm talking about.
I won't answer, you keep calling. I took chances, I went all in.
One cool part about this H delay is I like this lo-fi setting, and then you can use analog if you want, have some analog saturation. I don't really like it through this one, but then you can kind of low pass, high pass what you want. You can ping pong as well, which we'll do in a second, but not for this one. Don't jump the gun. So this is the first one.
I won't answer.
And what I recommend is you have this bad boy boosted high, and then you dial it back rather than trying to just like blend it in and hear it. Like, start with it exaggerated. This is so that you can actually hear what the plugin is doing, and then dial it back.
I won't answer, you keep calling. I took chances, I went all in.
Again, we're gonna hear what the beat is, hear kind of how it sounds.
I won't answer, you keep calling. I took chances, I went all in. Where were you when I need the most? With my back on the wall, hit you a ghost.
The reason I have these mapped to your macros too is because as we continue to add effects, these will continue to come out more or less as we go. So just to make it easy, but for now that sounds about right. Subtle. You want to keep these subtle. This next one, this is the main delay that I heard when I was listening to Lil Tjay. It's a ping pong delay, and this one is, I have the feedback dialed up a little bit more than the last one, because that I want, he has it so that it like echoes for a little bit kind of longer, and so that's what this one is, the fourth delay.
I won't answer, you keep calling. I took chances, I went all in. Where were you when I need the most? With my back on the wall, hit you a ghost. Mystery solved, I'm seeing it, how you done it. Blaming me now, who, that's good, ain't you funny? Olive branch, I gave you hung my noose from it. Keep it 200, your true colors, I see them now. I won't answer, you keep calling. I took chances, I went all in. Where were you when...
There you go. If this one gets too crazy, it can start to just muddy the vocal, but you want it to be kind of around in there, and we'll probably change these as we go with the reverbs. First reverb, this one I don't have mapped to a macro. This is going to be your plate reverb. Any plate reverb will do. Doesn't have to be this one. Pretty much plate reverb just puts it in a room, so it just sounds like you're in a little bit. It widens it a little bit, and it sounds like it's in a room. This is like really popular on Drake vocals, a lot of rap vocals. Even if they don't have a lot of reverb and delay, almost all of them have what I'd imagine feels like a plate reverb, where they just feel like they're almost more in a space.
I won't answer, you keep calling. I took chances, I went all in. Where were you when I need the most? With my back on the wall, hit you a ghost.
This one's gonna be hard to hear with the beat and stuff, so if you don't know what I'm talking about, this is what I mean.
I won't answer, you keep calling. I took chances, I went all in. Where were you when I need the most? With my back on the wall, hit you a ghost. Mystery solved, I'm seeing it, how you done it.
So soloed, it sounds like a pretty wet vocal, but when we have the beat, it blends in a little better.
I won't answer, you keep calling. I took chances, I went all in. Where were you when I need the most? With my back on the wall, hit you a ghost. Mystery solved, I'm seeing it, how you done it. Blaming me now, who, that's good, ain't you funny? Olive branch, I gave you.
If you're listening with headphones, you'll catch it. If you aren't, you probably won't. The next one is, this one's a real longer verb. So this one's a whole verb, quite a big one with some little bit longer time. And this is the one where we're going to start to kind of fill out that space a little bit. And this is one that I have mapped to this macro for you. So again, we're going to go exaggerated and then dial it back.
I won't answer, you keep calling. I took chances.
Depending on the Lil Tjay song, he uses more or less reverb. So study the song, depend on the vibe you want. But on this song, call my phone or calling my phone, I can't remember, but it's called something about calling my phone, is because the beat is pretty sparse, he has a bit of reverb going on. So I wanted to be like upfront in your face, but still have that, take up that space with the reverb and the delays.
I won't answer, you keep calling. I took chances, I went all in. Where were you when I need the most? With my back on the wall, hit you a ghost. Mystery solved, I'm seeing it, how you done it. Blaming me now, who, that's good, ain't you funny? Olive branch, I gave you hung my noose from it. Keep it 200, your true colors, I see them now. I won't answer, you keep calling. I took chances, I went all in. Where were you when I need.
So now that we bring these reverbs in, the delays are starting to feel a little bit more apparent, which is cool, but you don't want them, again, you don't want them to be too much. Well, maybe you do, but when I was listening to TJ, it didn't feel like it was, it felt like they were there if you're listening for them, but it adds to the vibe, not going to be distracting or take away from what you're looking for. And then this next piece to the macro is the widener, which are these two, which I love these two. If you see my other tutorials, I'm a fan of kind of adding these two together. This is a doubler. So basic waves doubler 2, default setting, just take out the direct line because again, we're just putting in the wet signal. And then this meta flanger at the default preset as well. So what I've done with these two is I've mapped both of their dry wet knobs to this widener knob. So if you look at these, look at those, they'll both go up, both go down, because I found this was, excuse me, I found this was a good balance between the two, but this is what it sounds like if they're exaggerated.
I won't answer, you keep calling. I took chances, I went all in.
Which is a kind of cool sound, but
I won't answer, you keep calling. I took chances, I went all in. Where were you when I need the most? With my back on the wall, hit you.
Now the vocal actually sounds like it's a little bit more in a space. If you were really listening to it, it doesn't feel like it is coming down the center, but it's a little bit more widened out a little bit. And so that's kind of these effects that we have going on. And this again, you want to dial in depending on what your beat is. This you might, some people like Young Thug has a lot of like these kind of flangers, phasers, kind of, these are like really exaggerated on a Thug vocal, where I didn't feel like TJ had a lot of these kind of crazy effects on it. His effects to me felt more like delay and verbs than they did like doublers, flangers, phasers, that sort of stuff. So that's kind of the first piece to this, and then we'll jump into this last piece now. Okay, so the last piece for these vocals is this S1 imager, which I have in here if you want it. I found it, for me, I'm not using that a ton on this one. It's just a little bit.
I won't answer, you keep calling. I took chances, I went all in. Where were you?
Almost negligible on the main vocal, but it's important on the doubles, which we'll get into in a second. So I have this S1 imager, and then last but not least, because we've added these effects, I want to tame, at the very end of my chain, I normally have a de-esser or some sort of thing to just kind of control things after all the effects have been added. So I like this one. This is a sibilance. This is again in the Waves Gold bundle, but any de-esser will do. I like the look ahead. This is kind of a detection about 38 between kind of your S's. This is if you just want to catch like very specific, or this obviously from this waveform you can tell it's detecting a little bit more. And the way that this works is this is telling you when it's triggering. So you play the vocal, and then this is telling you how much you want it to do the kind of that gain reduction.
I won't answer, you keep calling. I took chances, I went all in. Where were you when I need the most? With my back on the wall, hit you a ghost. Mystery solved, I'm seeing it, how you done it.
So that's kind of the last piece to this is going to be your widener and your sibilant or your de-esser of some sort, depending on what you want. And so now let's jump into how this actually sounds when it's put together with the doubles, and what I was doing with the doubles in terms of those effects, so that you can get the whole little TJ vibe with both the main vocal and the doubles. So when it came to his vocals, he had his doubles are definitely present. So I want to play this for you. And what I've done is this is pretty much the same rack as before, same macros mapped, everything like that. But what I've changed here are the effects. One, I have the stereo imager on this one cranked. So if you just listen to this.
You keep calling. I went all in. Where were you when I need the most? With my back on the wall, hit you a ghost.
And what I like to do with these is really try to, when I dial in my doubles for whoever the artist is I'm trying to recreate, really figure out what effects they're using. And so with his doubles, what I found is, yes, they're pushed very far stereo. And here, if you look at these knobs, I've demapped the macros on this one because I wanted the flanger or phaser. I wanted the doubles to sound very affected. I like to have the doubles sounding very affected. Obviously, I have a lot more delay coming in from these doubles on On this one, there's a lot more. If you look at these compared to the main vocal, all of these are way more apparent. So that's something to keep in mind. I'm pretty sure the C4 is pretty similar. Yeah. Pretty much a lot of things are the same, except I've just reworked a lot of these effects in a little bit of the order. I put the effects before the C4 in this one for the doubles. But again, if you put this in to your doubles, you're going to want to come in and change your EQs a little bit and just toy around with how you like your doubles to sound when it comes to effects. But I like to push the doubles a lot when it comes to the effects of the whole thing. So I hope that that was helpful. Again, check out all of the goodies below. I'll have that both of those, and those are all in the same TJ Destined to Win template. You buy that, you'll get both of them. A bunch of other tutorials, walkthroughs for you. Thank you for tuning in. As always, I have other things around this screen that you can click if you want. Appreciate you guys. Check that in the description below. Let me know which one to hear next, and we'll get to it. Check you in a minute. Peace.